you. Right.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Phoebe Golden, and I am Sebastopol Civic Spark Fellow, leading the development of the Climate Action Framework with the city's Climate Action Committee. And we are joined tonight by Mayor Slater, Councilmember Gurney, Planning Director Carrie Svanstrom, and many members of the city's Climate Action Committee. Those who will be helping facilitate tonight are Josh Osomane, Kenna Lee, Dina Allen, Woody Hastings, and Lisa Pierce. So thank you all for being here and supporting this initiative. So to give you all an idea of the schedule for this evening, we'll start with a brief presentation giving some background to the framework. Then we'll have a Q&A to answer any questions you might have. And then we'll move into breakout rooms where the committee members here will help facilitate a conversation about your climate change concerns and priorities, which is really the goal for this evening, is to hear from you all. And after the breakout rooms, we'll come back as a whole group to share some next steps. And we'll probably wrap up before 7:30, just depending on how much discussion there is. So we really hope that you can stick around for the whole time, but if you do need to leave early, this meeting is being recorded and the recording and slides will be posted on the city website after the meeting. And you can also share your input through the survey, which I will put in the chat now in case you need it. So I'll turn it over to Woody to start us off with a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Phoebe. The town of Sebastopol is located midway between the north boundary of historic Coast Miwok territory and the southern edge of southern Pomo territory. These native groups lost their homelands during the process of European colonization in North America and have worked continuously for centuries to protect and restore their language, cultural and political identities, and territory. We acknowledge that our community is built on unceded ancestral lands of these native people. Their needs, priorities, and insights are essential to climate action planning.
Thank you, Woody. So let's get into why Sebastopol is developing a climate action framework. And the framework is building on many actions that Sebastopol has taken in the past to protect the health and well-being of its community members and the environment. This includes in 2013 being the second city in the nation to require solar on new buildings, so reducing dependence on polluting fossil fuels. Also in 2013, being the third city in Sonoma County to join Sonoma Clean Power, which is our locally controlled electricity provider and provides significantly greener energy than PG&E. Also in debuting the first electric bus in Sonoma County in 2018 and subsidizing that bus route to support public transportation. And most recently, Sebastopol was the first city in the Bay Area to join the Water Upgrade Save program from the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, which helps customers switch to more water efficient equipment while reducing bills. And this is really important because we're in a drought, but also because water pumping, treating, and heating uses 20% of electricity and 30% of natural gas demand in California. And there's plenty of other actions that have reduced Sebastopol's emissions and made it a healthier place to live. And these actions are really important because we know what the alternative looks like. Sebastopol is already experiencing some of these impacts of climate change. On one hand, we have the longer and more intense fire season, bringing evacuations, power shutoffs, and poor air quality. And then we have the other extreme, these heavy rain events that cause flooding and property damage. And while events like these have occurred historically in the Sebastopol area, they're becoming more frequent, more intense, and less predictable with the changing climate. So when we talk about climate change, we're talking about these sort of long-term shifts in the average weather pattern, and they're driven by human emissions from burning fossil fuels. So in addition to the wildfire and flood impacts, the other main changes that are projected to increase in Sebastopol without action are hotter temperatures leading to increased heat-related illness and strain on the electric grid, as well as longer and more frequent droughts, leading to higher prices for water and food, and possible depletion of groundwater resources, which are really important for Sebastopol. And as you all know, these changes are really bad for human health. They're very expensive, and they're changing the natural systems that we rely on to provide us with clean air and water. So while we're already starting to experience many of these changes, our actions now can have a big impact to reduce their severity. And that's particularly clear in this graph of predicted annual maximum temperatures for Sebastopol. And we can see there could be up to a 10-degree difference between this medium emission scenario, which is shown in aqua, and the high emission scenario in purple. While the average annual rainfall is predicted to remain about the same, in the higher emission scenarios, we see greater variation between year to year, with wet years becoming even wetter and dry years becoming even drier. So since we know that our current emissions will determine our future climate, let's take a look at some of the main sources of emissions in Sebastopol. About 2/3 of Sebastopol's emissions come from transportation, mostly driving gas-powered vehicles. Another quarter of emissions comes from building energy use, which is primarily your gas, water, and home heating systems, as well as gas stoves and other appliances. And since 1990, Sebastopol has reduced its overall emissions by 8%. So what's shown on this slide is in what's called an activity or sector-based greenhouse gas inventory. And it captures the largest sources of emissions in Sebastopol that can most easily be reduced by local government action. Another way of looking at greenhouse gas emissions is what's called a consumption-based inventory. And this type of inventory looks at emissions at the household level. It's usually higher than the activity-based inventory because it captures more sources of emissions. So looking at this chart, it shows the average carbon footprint of a Sebastopol household. And you again see that transportation is the largest source of emissions, like we saw on the previous slide. But this graph also includes our emissions from our food choices and the goods and services that we purchase. So this consumption-based inventory actually yields a total emission calculation that's nearly 2 times higher than the activity-based inventory. It's about 126,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent compared to 66,000 on the previous slide. And the reason that many local governments focus on that activity-based inventory is that many of the sources of emissions listed here are really difficult for local governments to impact. For example, the city doesn't have the authority to regulate air travel or tell you what food you should be eating or how much clothes you should buy. So reducing these emissions requires individual actions, and Sebastopol residents are already making more sustainable choices. And we know this because this study, which was done by a group out of UC Berkeley, found that the average California household emits 45.7 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and the Sebastopol number was 38.5. So this means Sebastopol residents are already successfully reducing their emissions. And as we saw on the previous slide, the city as a whole has already reduced its emissions. So we know it's possible, we just need to do more and do it faster. And the city of Sebastopol has recognized the need to act on this issue. In December 2019, the City Council adopted a resolution declaring a climate emergency and committing to ongoing actions to restore a safe environment, including by setting the goal of reaching net zero emissions in 2030. Following that resolution, the City Council created the Climate Action Committee. It was created in January 2020, but didn't begin meeting until January 2021. And it's made up of 13 members of the Sebastopol community, many of whom are here tonight, and you already met some of them. And they volunteer their time twice a month, at least, many of them more than that, to work on climate issues and advise the City Council. So the climate action framework is the next step in addressing this climate emergency. The goal of the framework is to identify equitable, effective, and affordable climate policies that the city can adopt to reach carbon neutrality and prepare for those impacts of climate change that we're already beginning to experience. For those who aren't familiar with the term carbon neutrality, it means reducing our use of fossil fuels to the point where our plants and trees can absorb all of the greenhouse gases we emit, so balancing out emissions. And the framework will set this path to carbon neutrality by the 2030 goal, while also preparing for the climate impacts that we can't avoid. And in addition to determining actions the city can take, the framework is also a call to action for the whole community, because we really need everyone to participate in order to reach that goal, as we saw looking at those household level emissions. Importantly, we want to approach this process by putting equity first. And that means recognizing that historically underserved communities are already experiencing a disproportionate impact from these climate disruptions. And these communities also have fewer resources available to address these impacts. And so we want to acknowledge that those who are least capable of bearing the burdens should not be expected to pay the same costs as those who have more resources. And there's a moral imperative to prioritize actions and policies that promote social, racial, environmental, economic justice. To get a little more specific about what might be included in the framework, these are sort of two main categories that I've already alluded to. There's mitigation, which is actions to reduce emissions that cause climate change. And then there's adaptation, which is actions or policies to prepare for the impacts of climate change, like the wildfires and flooding. So some example mitigation strategies that the city might consider are an electric reach code to require the use of efficient electric appliances in buildings in place of natural gas. Could also include supporting public transportation and promoting electric vehicle infrastructure. On the adaptation side, some examples include prioritizing building in areas that aren't prone to floods or fires, and also preparing existing infrastructure for climate impacts. There's also a lot of overlap between these two categories, as this image suggests. Education, for example, is really important for both reducing emissions and preparing for climate change impacts. And then urban forests, which are down at the bottom, are an example of sequestration, where our trees can absorb carbon dioxide and prevent it from going into the atmosphere and contributing to further warming. And they also help with the adaptation side because they provide shade and help protect us from extreme heat impacts. And we have a lot of great models and resources out there for us to look towards in Sebastopol's Climate Action Framework. Sonoma County has a Regional Climate Protection Authority, the RCPA, which has mapped out this path to reducing emissions called the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy. There's also many other cities and organizations working on climate action with lots of great policies and solutions that we can consider. So we aren't starting from scratch in this framework process, but we're being resourceful and focusing on prioritizing actions that Sebastopol can take. And that is where you all come in, because we really want to hear from you about how you think Sebastopol should approach this climate emergency. And the timeline for the framework, it's going to be unfolding over the next 7 months or so, launching today with your input. We also have a survey out to get input that way, and we've also been tabling at the farmers market. I know I've seen some of you there, and we'll be using all of this input that we get from you all to inform the priorities in the research and writing phase of the framework. And we have a goal of getting a draft ready this summer to share with you all and get your feedback on. So next, we are going to move into the breakout room portion to start hearing from you all and hearing your input. But I want to stop here and see if there are any questions that we can answer. And you can either raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function, or you can put your question in the chat. Yeah, Woody, did you have a question?
Not really a question. I just wanted to let folks know that that the survey has been placed in the chat. So if folks want to access the survey in the chat, they can do it that way.
Great, thank you, Woody. Diana, Badger?
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I'm just wondering if in the breakout rooms, we're going to have access to any of the graphics to sort of be able to help us conjure up ideas, because I was noticing 2 graphics before this one. I started to jot down, for instance, all electric buildings campaign, and there may have been other things in there that would be useful to look at or consider to discuss when we're in the breakout rooms.
That's a great question. We do have a Jamboard set up to help sort of facilitate that discussion. I'll be going over that in just a minute. I can see if I can add some of those images to the Jamboards, if that would be helpful. But yeah, there will be questions to go through to help facilitate that discussion.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised, but Carrie or others, let me know if I'm missing someone. Oh, Zeno?
Yeah, hi. I wonder whether you can tell me how the water campaign was financed.
How which water campaign was financed?
Yeah, how was the financial structure for the city to do this campaign? I had it on here at my house, but I kind of wonder how this it was financed.
Are you talking about the Water Upgrade Save program?
Right.
Okay, I am not familiar with the specifics of that. Are you, Carrie?
So that was, thank you, make sure I'm not muted. That was an item that was, are you talking about the Bay Run?
Right.
Water upgrades? Yeah. So that was a program actually in conjunction with RCPA, I believe, and our city council was approached and authorized that program. It's one of the initiatives that Bay Run is doing throughout the Bay Area. And actually, Tanya, we do have Tanya Merritt here from RCPA. So I see her hand up and happy to toss it to her for some additional detail.
Sure. Thank you, Carrie. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay, cool. So yes, this is a program of the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. And the program essentially provides on-bill. So the cost of the program is paid back over time on the utility bill for each customer who elects to participate in the program. And the financing that makes that possible is provided by the Association of Bay Area Governments. So they're providing that financial capital that allows the improvements to be made up front, and then as a customer, you would pay back the cost of that over time. And the program is designed such that the energy savings and water savings that you achieve by implementing those improvements allows you to actually reduce your bill even while you're paying back the cost of those improvements. So it's actually a savings for you even while you're paying back that cost. So it's really a great program.
So was there any cost to the city to participate in this program?
There is some staff time, but other than that, there aren't any hard costs, if you will. So the cost of, for example, mailing out letters to folks was covered by the Bay Run program itself.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so if there aren't any more questions, we're going to move on to the breakout rooms. And these are the questions we're going to be discussing in the breakout rooms. There will be a climate action committee member in each room to help facilitate the conversation. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using this tool called Jamboard. So I am going to provide a brief demo of that now. Can everyone see the Jamboard? Yes. Okay. So this is a Jamboard. It's a Google tool, and you can click through at the top to see the different slides. There's a question on each slide. And then you can add your comments by going over to the side and clicking on the sticky note tool. And then you can type on there, click save, and then you have a sticky note with your thoughts on it. So the committee members in each room can take notes for you if you're not able to access the tool. They'll be putting the link to it in the chat once you get into your breakout rooms. But don't worry about it if you're not able to use it. We'll still be recording your input, and we'll be in the breakout rooms for maximum 30 minutes. So you can go through these questions at your own pace, and then feel free to come back to the main room when your group has finished discussing the questions. So I think we're good to open the breakout rooms, Carrie, if you're ready.
All right, so I have opened the rooms. We do have a facilitator assigned to each room, and it looks like folks will be joining the various rooms now.
Lisa, did you have a question? You're muted, Lisa. Lisa, you're muted.
I just, my question was just answered. Thank you.
Okay, great. So you can go ahead and join your breakout room if you've been invited.
Yeah, and it looks like I may be needing to do it manually, which is able to do that.
So Lisa, are you able to join your breakout room? Okay, I guess I will go join Lisa's room.
Okay, thank you. And so, yeah, just so you know, I did. It looks like I needed to assign people. Okay, so we have about 8 people in each of the rooms, but yeah, if you want to go ahead and pop into Lisa's room.
Okay.
I did assign them for the numbers you had, so she is in room 3, it looks like.
Okay,
she
great.
does not have another CAC member, so I can throw another CAC member in there if I need to.
That's okay. I'll just jump in there. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. And Elliot and Sal, I see you're still with me in the main room. Were you able to join the rooms, one of the rooms? Oh, looks like Sal. Sal, are you able to unmute yourself? Hello, Mary. I see you're joining us. If you could unmute yourself and when you're connected, let me know, and I have a little bit of instructions for you. Hi, Mary. So we are doing an activity in breakout rooms right now, trying to get feedback from the public who's joined the meeting regarding climate change. And so I'm going to go ahead and assign you into one of those groups. It's basically just like in a regular meeting where you might be asked to break into a small group for a while. That'll be going on for the next few minutes. So I'm going to assign you to room 1, and Joshua is there as the facilitator. June, you are at the Climate Action Framework meeting. If you could let me know when you have audio, if you can mute yourself.
Yeah, I was in the breakout with Dina, and I was on my phone. I switched my computer, so I don't know if you can put me in the breakout with Dina.
I sure can. Let me
Okay,
just see
great.
which room she is. Okay, yep, I'll
Dina,
send you right
I'm
now.
moving to my computer.
All right, thanks. Okay, June, I have assigned you, so you should be able to join.